Hey, discerning listeners, Love is Blind, Season 3. Let's watch.
I'm not going to sit here and convince you. I am a great, great girl. Your family would be crazy not to love me. I am a catch of the century. I am.
Except for when you have a bad attitude.
Okay, so they've been having an argument. They were having dinner, and the point in the season where we're at is where everyone is essentially verbally reaffirming that they want to get married, but there seems to be a lot of dancing around the fact that many of the cast members do not intend on getting married. Either they've agreed on it or internally they've made a decision. The way that this show is designed is there's like a certain rhythm to it. 90 Day Fiancé has this as well. And it just feels like either they all agree or they just independently agree themselves to act like they are still on the fence, or yes, but maybe they'll say no. They're not really quite sure. But anyway, so they were reaffirming that they're both going to say yes, and Cole keeps hammering on it. It's like, are you sure? Because I don't think you really want to marry me. And she's like, yeah, I'm a yes right now. And in my head, I'm like, are you really? So I think Cole is not playing the game of the show by kind of going after her a little bit. He's being a jerk and pointed and not fair and mean and annoying. But anyway, so then he just says, something about when she's in a bad mood or something. I don't know what I included there, but he was saying that she is frequently complaining about him, making him feel small. He feels attacked, that kind of thing. And we saw a little bit of that first day when they woke up. We haven't seen anything like that on camera since, but that doesn't mean it isn't happening. She certainly comes across as way more reasonable than she did on that first day, so it's hard to imagine, but we don't know. But given the way that he talks and the way he talks to her, I wouldn't be surprised if he's just looking for a reason to say no, or it almost feels like what he's trying to do is provoke her to say no, and then he can say yes, and then he'll look like the good guy to the audience. I don't know if that's what's happening, but it just kind of looks that way to me.
Are you bipolar?
Wait, what? What's that? Oh boy. Okay, let's rewind that. Where did that come from?
I'm not going to sit here and convince you. I am a great, great girl. Your family would be crazy not to love me. I am a catch of the century. I am.
Except for when you have a bad attitude. Are you bipolar?
That is a problem on a number of levels. I'll talk about the accuracy clinically first, as the first level. She doesn't come across as someone who is suffering from bipolar to me in terms of what we've been presented. I don't know if maybe she'll say, I do suffer from bipolar. There are plenty of people that do that aren't symptomatic for a time or they're medicated. But in terms of what he identifies as problematic behavior in her, and I was pointing it out too on that first day, it wasn't severe by any means, but it was not in line with bipolar. But I will say that people who have attachment disruptions and relational traumas that result in schemas and oversensitivity to being hurt and then being hostile, that even in my field, clinicians will mistake that for bipolar. And I've seen it. I've had clients who have suffered from personality disorders or preoccupied attachment, which isn't a diagnosis, who will go to the hospital or somewhere else and be assessed in 3 minutes and be diagnosed with bipolar and given medication for that. And they never reached out to me, even though I've been assessing this individual for months, if not years. So I have had a history, and it's well documented, it's well understood in our field that there are a lot of people that are misdiagnosed as being bipolar, partially because there's not a lot of time for certain individuals to assess, someone's in the hospital. There are certain presentations that can kind of look like bipolar, but to me, the confusion is, I don't understand it, because bipolar is very particular. It's a very particular disorder, and once you see it in action, presumably if you're a clinician, you've seen it. It's a fairly common disorder, mood disorder. Depression's pretty distinctive. Hypomania is pretty distinctive. Mania is pretty distinctive. Psychosis, not everyone with bipolar suffers from psychosis, but psychosis is pretty distinctive. So to confuse what she is doing with bipolar is ridiculous. But I wouldn't be surprised if there are people who are watching her, and even clinicians, and thinking that she might be bipolar, or other kinds of folks on the show. I'm sure there are people labeling him as being bipolar, because there's just this. So that's clinicians. And then among lay people, yeah, forget about it. I mean, bipolar it's not too complicated, but it's particular enough that a lot of people, for whatever reason, as a shorthand for bipolar, they think someone who gets angry a lot, which is ridiculous, because there's a lot of reasons why someone would get angry. One could even look at her anger as totally justified, maybe even gender-based. I haven't even talked about that. There's a possibility that sexism and misogyny is happening right now, and that her anger is fighting back against many men, including Cole, who have talked down to her and made her feel worthless because she isn't the perfect specimen according to the male gaze, that kind of thing. So there are a lot of reasons why people get angry, some justified, some not. It doesn't mean someone has bipolar. So yeah. Now, if you Google online, there will be a lot of people that will think that she does have bipolar. If Cole went online and said, my girlfriend has this problem, what is she? There'd be a lot of people that say she had bipolar. So it's ridiculous. Now, on another layer, though, let's say she does have bipolar. The way he's wording it right now is it's an accusation. It's an indictment. I have caught you, and I, on high, have now labeled you, even though I'm not a clinician and I have no idea what I'm talking about. It's a pretty paternalistic, abusive way of using this. Even if she did have bipolar, that doesn't negate her argument or make it so that everything she says is ridiculous, right? So, let's rewind.
Of the century. I am.
Except for when you have a bad attitude. Are you bipolar?
Now, I will say that if you are in a relationship with someone who has preoccupied attachment, disorganized attachment, histrionic, borderline, and other kinds of personality disorders, paranoid personality disorder, it can feel like bipolar in the way that people misunderstand it. In that it can feel like your partner is two different people. In one moment, and that's the way that Cole is conceptualizing it, that there's some times when everything's great and you're in a good mood and I feel safe and everything's going well. And then there are other moments where it's just like, boom, and it seems to come out of nowhere. I don't understand where it comes from. And all of a sudden you're attacking me and you're in a bad mood and I can't console you and you're like a different person. So in their mind, that feels like what they think bipolar is, even though that's not. Bipolar is two poles of moods, from depression to mania. Very different thing. And certainly you're not. Anyway, point is that it can feel that way, like, oh my goodness, you're like two different people. In the past, they would have said you're schizophrenic, because that's the layperson's misunderstanding of what schizophrenia was that you're two different people. Some people will still use that term. It's just like, oh my God, my boss, he's so schizophrenic. One day he's like this and the next day he's like that. Again, that's not schizophrenia. Just like so far, just say they seem like two different people. Don't use a clinical term that you have no idea what you're talking about. It's annoying. So he's saying, are you bipolar? And yeah, now her that first day, she did seem to exhibit that reactivity that people in relation to her would sense. They would say like, oh my God, like sometimes she's in a good mood and all of a sudden, boom, she's just like so angry and it doesn't make sense to me. I've been over it many, many times. Like, why would you get that upset about that little thing? She's just like in this whole other world. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it did have that feel. Again, in that first day, I can't tell if that was justified from her. Remember, she's like, this is great. And he says, yeah, this is good. And then she heard good and said, that's not great. And then was attacking him. And he seemed legit like, no, I didn't mean good like less or great. I meant good like great. I just use that word of good, but you focus on the negative all the time. And then you're hurt. And then you're convinced that I'm a bad person. You talk down, because she does. When she gets in that mode, she's kind of talking down to him. So anyway, we'll just add this to another reason why I'm guessing the audience will hate Cole. I don't know if that's the case. By the way, I'm recording this before we even publish the very first reaction video for this. So I have no idea what anyone thinks of it. So if you've been commenting all along and thinking, why isn't he responding to the comments? It's because I'm batch recording all of these before we even post them. So, just keep that in mind.
We're having a very serious conversation.
What
so
did I
I'd love
ask
to
you
know.
just now? I asked you a question.
You asked if I was bipolar.
Oh, are you bipolar?
I mean, the arrogance and if he was using some other term, because he's smirking the whole time. So his one out is if he thinks, I'm just being funny and you know I'm being funny and we're both on the same side. So let's watch ahead, maybe. I don't know.
Are you projecting?
My God, right? We've seen worse behavior in the various shows that I watch for sure, but there's just, I don't know. Okay, pal, you don't like her or you have some complaints, fine, voice it in the normal way. But this arrogant know-it-all, I'm going to label you, you are this. I wouldn't be surprised if he literally believes that he's right in his diagnosis of her. Yikes.
Century. I am.
Except for when you have a bad attitude. Are you bipolar?
We're having a very serious conversation.
What
so
did I
I'd love
ask
to
you
know.
just now? I asked you a question.
You asked if I was bipolar.
Oh, are you bipolar?
Yeah, the only way for him out of this is that they edited it, but he was joking because he's smirking pretty hard throughout that. So if they took out a little bit there where he's like, I'm just joking, never mind, and then they took that out and then skipped forward to this face, I don't know. It's not a vindication by any means because it's still condescending and arrogant for him to say, but yikes.
Are you projecting?
So you can take my breath.
You are obviously entitled to and allowed to think whatever you want.
So, what I've been sort of annoyed with thus far with Love is Blind as a TV show as a whole is that when they get engaged, from that point forward, my impression is the cast members either internally or there is external pressure for them not to break up prior to being at the altar. So if this couple actually goes to the altar, then that is a pretty good case example in the column that supports my hypothesis. I can't know if it's true, of course, unless they confirm that or something. But in any other world, they would break up and certainly at the very least would put off the wedding, right? So if they actually go up on the altar and if either one of them says yes, then there's some fakery going on, which annoys me because like with Shayna, she walked off because she met Kyle and was like, yeah, I thought maybe something would work, but it didn't work, so I'm out of here. Plenty of people could do it at various different points. And the annoying thing is we have to sit through them having all these conversations where they're, I think, faking this presentation of like, yeah, I'm a yes with, we'll just have to see what I say at the altar. Like, I haven't shown all those scenes, but a lot of them will say that. It's like, well, I'm a yes now, but, I'm just not going to know what I'm going to say until I'm at the altar. I'm like, who thinks like that? Who thinks like that? Who thinks, well, I'm pretty sure I want to marry them. I'm not quite sure. You know what? I'll wait to make a decision and a determination at the altar after we've invited all the people. Maybe you have said I do. That moment, that will be the point where I will make that choice. No one does that. And of course, they wouldn't do that unless there was pressure from internal or external. I don't know. Maybe they don't get paid. Maybe they risk being sued or they sign a contract. Maybe there's manipulative tactics put on them. Maybe they agree like, look, we both want to be at the altar because that's a good scene that we want to. I don't know what the motivation is. So if they go to the altar, then that is evidence in my mind that supports that hypothesis. And the reason why I take issue with that is, as I've said, if there's a story to be told and there's a fair amount of what we're seeing that is real. And when you introduce things that look fishy, then the whole thing is questionable, right? You can't know if any of it is true if there are some obvious things that are untrue. That's why you should just tell the story. Producers, if you are watching, which I'm sure you're not, tell the story. There's a good story here. If they broke up and didn't go to the altar, it's still an awesome story. You got some good footage, you got some good stories. You just don't have them walking up on the altar. It's not an important scene. They don't need none of these couples, if none of them could end up at the altar. And I realize that it's not good for your trailer to have no shots of anyone at the altar, but who cares about the trailer? We're interested in the humans. We're interested in the story, I assume. But Netflix, Love is Blind, they know a lot more about entertainment than I do, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe everyone needs to see that scene, but I don't know. It just kind of bothers me.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Unfortunately, life doesn't come with a user manual. Navigating all the various challenges we face can make you feel unsure or stuck in place. Whether it's a relationship, or going through grief, or considering a new career. And, generally speaking, a therapist can really help with that. By helping you to explore your feelings, and by giving you the space to clarify what you want to do. In my life, I can't imagine where I'd be without the therapy I've had. During some of the biggest moments of my life, therapists have been there for me. To slow me down, to listen to me, to help me explore. Well, that's where BetterHelp comes in. As the world's largest therapy service, BetterHelp has matched 3 million people with professionally licensed and vetted therapists available 100% online. Plus, it's affordable. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to match with a therapist. If things aren't clicking, you can easily switch to a new therapist anytime. It couldn't be simpler. No waiting rooms, no traffic, no endless searching for the right therapist. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/Kirk. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Kirk.
I've given you no reason to think
You're
any
not
of those
bipolar.
things. No. If you want, there are plenty.
That face. Yeah.
Entitled to and allowed to think whatever you want. I've given you no reason to think
You're
any
not
of those
bipolar.
things. No. If you want.
Ick. My God. Gross. Abusive. Awful. Unethical. Immoral. Paternalistic. Sexist. Because that's a common thing that men will do to women. You're having emotions. You're bipolar. In the old days, men could literally, without the woman's consent, incarcerate her, put her in an institution because he has labeled her as having a problem. The husband goes to the physicians, who are also men, and says, my little lady, she's got issues. She needs to be put away. She's not talking to me with respect. And this goes on around the world in some cultures now. So we're not that bad, but we're still bad. And this is an example of it, which is truly disgusting, really.
There are plenty of women that fit the bill for what you are looking for that will be sweet to you every day of your life. You go find one tonight.
And the fact that she's holding it together, and not only holding it together, but being extremely mature and taking the high road, tells me that my early hypothesis about her attachment injuries was probably not accurate. I'm guessing that first day was just a lot. She was just overwhelmed and her insecurities were sneaking through, which is normal. But since then, we haven't seen that. And in this moment, she's really handling it well, better than I think anyone ever could. So if she had attachment injuries and significant schemas and a lot of relational traumas that have yet to be healed, this would be a perfect moment to be triggered, right? It's just to be attacked like that, or to be triggered to believe like maybe I am I don't know. There's a lot of different vulnerabilities there and a lot of opportunity for meltdowns, and she did not have it. She's totally holding it together. A lot of ego strength. So I'm beginning to think that my initial take was premature.
You can find one tomorrow at your bachelor party. If that is what you want, go find it. Leave me alone for whatever you are doing with me, because I don't want to be here anymore.
So it sounds like she's saying, look, if you want to leave me, leave me. But she's not saying, I'm going to leave you, because I think they can't leave each other or something. Because under any other circumstance, she'd be like, I'm out. Here's the mic. Get me out of here. This guy is a 3 times, or what's my rating? I'll give it a 3 yikes on the, it's 3 yikes on the yikes scale.
Zanab!
Please stop being an asshole.
I'm not
Right
being an
now.
asshole.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
Yeah. Usually I'm not a fan of that kind of talk, like don't be an asshole, but that is a very good description. Like, what other word would you put to it? You're being purposely hostile and asshole-ish. You're being dick-ish. I'm not going to call you an asshole or a dick, but you're acting like one of those people. Yeah, so.
I wasn't telling you to leave. It's like, if you're gonna walk out, then like tell me why, and don't say it's because I said a line. That's not a...
Wow. So now it's her fault that she walked away from a conversation that was going nowhere, and he was pestering her. I didn't even show that bit of it. And then he just really condescendingly and arrogantly says, "You're bipolar." Right, we all understand. Like, you're crazy. All you and your emotions, you're crazy. And the fact that she walks away, that's somehow a problem. Like, she's protecting herself, or at the very least, why continue talking to someone that is being hostile and abusive and awful to you? So, so now it's her fault.
A line, that's me just being me.
Yeah, something about this guy. I've heard that before, Andre or someone saying, "It is what it is." It's like people's excuse. Angela will say this as well, that it's like, "Look, I'm just being me. I'm being honest. This is how I am." Okay, well, maybe, let's say you murder someone on purpose, well, that's murder, but you kill someone because you feel like it, and you go to the judge, you'd be like, "Hey, that's just me. What are you going to do? That's just how I am. I said I might do something like that. So, hey," it's like, that doesn't give you license. Just saying that is how you are doesn't negate the fact that you are completely, what's the word? I'm just going to say immorally attacking and labeling her in an arrogant, because there's hostility, right? Like, she was hostile with him on that first day about the things that we saw. And one could argue, we don't know, but it looked like it wasn't completely justified. But why is that brand of hostility that he was exhibiting so much worse? Is it the arrogance? Is it the know-it-allism? Is it so when she was having hostility with him, she still had empathy. There wasn't evidence that she didn't care about his feelings. There wasn't evidence that she did care, but when he was calling her bipolar and really going after her, and the attitude like, "Come on, you don't have that demeanor that he had, it's on a foundation of no empathy, where you just generally don't care about this other human being." Is that what it is? There's something more disturbing about the way he was talking to her. It's not just being hostile, which is, I guess, why I kind of flipped out a little bit. But anyway, he's blaming her.
I wasn't trying to make a smart aleck comment. I did make a smart aleck comment maybe, but I was just caught up in the moment. We've come way too far to let something petty like that phrase or that moment in.
Okay, that's not a great explanation, buddy. And then he's, I think, saying, "We've come too far to let that get in the way." I think this is him saying we should go to the altar and get married. That doesn't make any sense. The two of them do not want to get married. I think we all understand that. So I wish the producers would just let them break up, because I don't think they want to go to the altar. I think they want to break up. So
I'm not asking you to convince me to marry you. I envision myself marrying you. That's what I see as best case scenario.
I don't know how we got to tonight from dance lesson and sailboat. I don't.
We had a really bad interaction. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it was neither of ours fault.
You're just gonna go ahead and declare that? Yeah? He says that as if he's giving her some grace there, like he wants to say it's all her fault, but you know what? I'm just gonna come out and say it. Neither of our fault. I'll be the magnanimous one. Wow, that's great of you. I'm being sarcastic and mocking. What is it about him? I mean, I'll see it before, and I'll see audiences react to some people on the show, and it'll be this reaction, and I'm always like, huh? But this time, am I alone? Or is... Okay. So I'm sure Cole is a good enough person. I'm sure he has issues like everyone else. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he either was triggered and or thought he was making a joke. That's why he was smirking the whole time while he's calling her bipolar in this super aggressive, not aggressive, but arrogant, know-it-all, lack of empathy manner. So, yeah. I'm guessing it's just... So if I was to make a hypothesis, let's just assume that Cole is mostly a good person, that the two of them are in a situation where they are forced to try to work it out or forced to act like they're trying to work it out because the production team has asked them to make it all the way to the altar. And he is done and he's not used to faking it. And that's actually a pretty good hypothesis because I don't know if it's true, but he's been saying that he's honest, he's blunt, and he is. And she at first loved that about him. And he'll just say things that aren't really self-serving at times. And anyway, so let's just say that in his heart, he has wanted to leave a long time ago. And again, some pressure, internal, external, from her, I don't know, probably from production team, I don't know, and says, you got to stay in it to win it. You got to have these conversations, and we got to film it, and we got to see you debating it. We got to see some action. And he's just like, in his heart, he's like, but I'm done. And I'm not used to faking it. I'm used to walking away and just telling it like it is. So he's forced in the situation, and then they're forced to have a conversation. And then he starts going after her about, like, you don't want to marry me, because he kept pestering her over and over again. He was like, she kept saying, like, yeah. And he's like, stop playing games, or, just lay it on, just be honest with me. Because this is all sounding more and more plausible, because I bet you anything in that moment, he was thinking, I don't want to be here anymore. So if she says no, then I'm off the hook, right? The contract, like when Shayna left Kyle he wasn't in breach of his contract with the show. Shayna was, right? So if he can get her to, breach the contract by saying, yeah, I'm done before the altar, then he's like, win-win. I don't have to go to the altar. I don't have to fake it. And I'm not the bad guy, and I'm not in breach of contract. So he keeps hammering on her, also trying to pester her, right? In this super immature way, trying to provoke her to break up with him. And that didn't work. Yeah, this is all sounding more plausible. It doesn't justify what he's doing. There's a lot of different ways he could have handled that, but I think it's an explanation. I don't know if it's true.
I really do love you.
I love you.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, too.
That was really hard to see you leaving. I basically gave you every chance to say no, you don't want to marry me. And you didn't.
I would tell you.
Right. So now he's being honest about trying to provoke her to say no and leave. So I think it's just another data point in that column. Okay, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone, please take care of yourself and take care of others, because we all deserve it. We really, really do.